So that's exactly what I was just talking about when I said that the position equation, the derivative of it is the velocity equation.
And the derivative.
The derivative of that is the acceleration equation. So what we've done in physics is rather than doing this every single time, they've just given us some general equations for it.
Okay.
So the physics kids know a little bit of calculus, and they have some equations that were derived from calculus that they don't really understand. And calculus kids know a little bit about physics, and they're using that little bit of physics and using calculus to solve the problem. And they both get the same answer because they're both using the same system. They just
Right.
So this problem is a physics problem. In physics, we approach it this way, where we mark off our points, and then we solve.
Mm-hmm.
In calculus, you just do it purely through calculus. So what are the other questions? What are the velocity?
And speed. So velocity and speed are the same thing other than the velocity includes a direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the derivative of anything, speed isn't.
No.
Okay.
Reach the height.
So that's the velocity and speed at 256 feet above the ground.
Okay.
So we just plug that into time? Or no, because it's a position.
Right. So what can you do to find a time using a position? So let's look at it first. Let me erase this stuff right here. And this stuff right here. Let's do it the calculus way first. Okay. So if you want to find your velocity at that point, you look at your velocity equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need a t. But you have a position but no t.
Right.
So how are you going to solve for that t?
Do we have to go back up to the position
Yeah.
equation?
So you can say, what is it, 256?
Yeah. Equals 160 t minus 16 t squared. And then we just solve for t.
Yep. What you'll have to do is do this. Negative 16t squared plus 160t plus 256. You might be able to factor that out. I don't really know. But you need to solve this with the quadratic equation to get t.
Yeah, you'd pull out a 16, wouldn't you?
Yeah, let's see, so 16, this would be negative t squared plus 10t. What's 256 divided by 16?
16 is 16.
16. So then you could say, what could you say? You could say this was 8 minus t. Oh, no. Nope. Yeah. So you could say 8 minus t. No, that doesn't work, does it?
Negative 16. Be negative 16 times t squared. Oh, that's where we're at. That's
Right, I'm just trying to figure out how we factor this out. So what if we took out a negative 16? Call this positive, and these ones negative. That would give us a negative 16 times. So you need a negative 16, so you have a t is positive minus 8, okay? And t minus 2. Oh no, that would give you a positive 16. Dang it. Anyway, I'd probably just stick it on a polysolver or something like that on your calculator. Cause I'm just trying to figure out.
Okay, so let's see, let me just. So, 56 equals 160 t minus 16t squared. Solve for t. Okay, yeah, so t equals 2 or t equals 8. So that gives you both the up and down. Need to-
Oh, it is 2 or 8. Oh, it's because we had a negative 256. Dang. So yeah, so when we factored this, it should have been this. Negative 16 times t squared minus 10t plus 16.
Okay,
And then you would factor this out to t minus 2, t minus 8. So so this means on the way up, t equals 2. On the way down, t equals 8 seconds. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So then how do you find your velocity?
Oh, let's see, 2 seconds, you enter in 2 seconds for time.
So that would give you 160 minus,
Negative 32 times 2.
so it'd be 96.
Yeah.
And then what happens if you put 8 in there? It gives you 240, 256, 160 minus 256.
Negative 256, yeah.
Right? So if you have 160 minus 64 or 160 minus 256, you're going to get the same answer.
Yeah.
So the speed on the way up at 256 is 96 feet per second.
Okay.
And the velocity at time equals 2 is 96 feet per second. The speed at time equals 8 is 96 feet per second, but the velocity is negative 96 feet per second.
Alrighty, that's not too bad.
No. And then you find the acceleration right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it just tells you at any point it's going to be negative 32 feet per second squared.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're going to do it the physics way, just because it's better.
Okay.
So we say this is 256. Let's say we still don't know time. Don't do this way on your calculus homework or your calculus test though. Oh, and then the max height. We forgot to solve for that.
All right. We know a time, don't we?
No, so we haven't found time for the max height yet.
Okay. There's an equation for V final though, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. So well, let's do it the calculus way real fast. So using these equations that we found, what is the velocity going to be at the very top?
0.
Right.
Well, yeah, 0, because it's. Yeah.
So if you're trying to find a maximum on position, then you want to find where the derivative is 0. So we need to find out when this would be equal to 0. What time would make that equal to 0?
Okay.
So 160 over 32 gives you your time.
5 seconds.
So yeah, and that makes sense because this was 2 and this was 8. So you had 3 more seconds than 3 seconds back. So 5 seconds. You plug that in here and you get, what is this, 500, 800 minus 16 times 25, which is 400.
Yeah. So 400.
Okay, so that's your max height according to the calculus that you did. Okay, so when you do it the calculus way, you take your derivatives to find your velocity and acceleration equation. To find your maximum height, you use velocity to find the time, because you know the velocity is 0. You use velocity to find time, you plug it back into position. When they give you a position and ask what the velocity is there, you use position to find time and then plug it into your velocity.
Okay.
All right. So that's calculus way. So let's find maximum height using the physics equations.
Okay.
So we got this one, y final equals y initial plus v initial t plus 1/2 at squared. Then we've got v final equals v initial plus at. And this one is the best one for this. Changing y. Okay. So you remember how I said you could get by with just these two?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we just did with the calculus.
Okay.
But since they've given us this one, we'll just use this one. So we want to find the maximum height. So what's our v initial?
0.
What's our v? No.
160.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So our v final is 0, right?
For some reason I
Equals-
associate initial with 0.
Yeah. And then our initial is 160 plus 2 times a, which is negative 32, times the change in y. Well, the change in y from this point to this point will give us your total height, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is this going to end up being? Negative 160 squared over negative 64 equals change in y.
Okay.
So throw that in your calculator and see what you get. Let's see. E squared.
Negative 64 is 400. You already calculated that yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just the difference. So in calculus, you get these equations, that only gives you these two.
Uh-huh.
And then in physics, they went ahead and derived this one for us so that, because you remember we had to solve, to get that before, we had to solve for time using this one, and go back and plug it in this one.
Mm-hmm.
We could have done that here too, we could have solved for time here and plugged it back in here. Instead, they gave us an equation that already does that for us.
Okay.
So you remember the other one, we had to solve for time with the position equation, and then plug it back in here. So we'll be able to use this one again. So velocity final is what we're looking for. What's our velocity initial?
160.
And then our acceleration is negative 32. And what's our change in y if we're trying to find it at 256?
256.
Okay. So that squared will be 160 squared plus, well, it'll actually be minus 64 times 256. So 160 squared minus 64 times 256. That'll give you this, your velocity squared.
Okay.
160.
Okay. So, 9,216, and then
And you just take the square root of that.
96.
Okay. And then you could do that, you can actually do the same thing if you go all the way up and come back down. Problem is it gives you a negative answer and you can't get that to square. You can't take the square root of the negative answer. So you can though, if you wanted to solve for the velocity going this way, what you could do, oh no, that still doesn't work though, I guess. Because you could start at the top. Oh no. Does it work? No. Nope. So no matter what, you can't get your negative 96 out of this because velocity final, it's going to be squared. So when you plug it into this equation, it'll become a positive. So really, this gives you velocity final equals plus or minus 96.
Mm-hmm.
So you just come here and you say, well, I'm on my way up, it's positive, but on the way back down, it'll be negative.
Right. Okay.